The light arrives first before meaning, a single, steady point glowing against a dark, unfinished universe. It does not flicker. It does not rush. It simply exists, brighter than it should be, older than memory, quietly insisting on being seen. Long before galaxies had fully formed their graceful spirals, long before stars settled into familiar patterns, this light was already travelling. It moved without sound, crossing expanding space, passing through eras that had no names yet. Tonight, it reaches you, not with urgency but with patience, as if it has been waiting for this exact moment when the world grows quiet enough to notice. Only after we sit with this image for a moment do words begin to form around it. Only then do we allow ourselves to wonder what could shine so intensely, from so far away, in a universe still learning how to glow. Welcome to AstraFlow. Here, science drifts like starlight, and curiosity becomes calm. Tonight, let your thoughts slow down, your breathing find its rhythm, and your mind float through wonder. This space is made for lingering, for listening without effort, for letting questions remain soft at the edges, unanswered if they wish to be. You don't need to hold on to every idea. You don't need to remember every detail. You can simply rest, knowing that the universe will continue its quiet motions whether you follow them or not. Some people find AstraFlow late at night, when the day has finally loosened its grip. Others return night after night, letting these gentle stories become part of their sleep. However you arrived here tonight, you're welcome to stay exactly as you are. And if this calm journey brings you peace, you can gently support AstraFlow by liking this video or subscribing. It helps this quiet corner of the cosmos keep glowing. As we begin, imagine yourself not as an observer standing apart, but as a listener, someone receiving a message carried patiently across time. The universe has sent many such messages. Most are faint, some are subtle, and a few, like quasars, shine with a power so great that even billions of years cannot dim them completely. These distant beacons are not loud. They do not announce themselves. They simply shine and allow discovery to happen slowly. They remind us that the past is never fully gone, that light remembers where it came from, and that even in the earliest chapters of the universe, there was already something reaching outward. Now, let's begin tonight's voyage into the quiet story of quasars, beacons from the early universe. There is a quiet habit shared by nearly everyone who has ever looked up at the night sky. Without being taught, without being asked, we turn our eyes toward the darkest places and wonder what might be shining there. Not because we expect answers, but because something in us feels calmer when we look far away. Why is that? Why does the human mind, tired from a single day, feel drawn to light that has travelled for billions of years? Perhaps it is because distance softens things. When something is far enough away, it no longer demands anything from us. It cannot interrupt us. It cannot hurry us. It simply exists, quietly, patiently, allowing us to observe without pressure. The earliest light in the universe is like that, untouched by our schedules, our worries, our need to control outcomes. When we look toward ancient light, we're not just looking outward, we're also looking backward, back into a time when nothing knew what it would become yet, back before names, before borders, before stories had endings. There is comfort in that unfinishedness. It reminds us that uncertainty is not a failure of understanding, but a natural state of existence. Quasars live at the edge of this idea. They are not close. They are not recent. Their light began its journey long before Earth formed oceans, long before the first breath was ever taken. And yet, here it is, arriving gently, as if it never forgot where it was going. We don't look toward the earliest light to escape the present. We look because it places the present inside something larger, something slower, something that moves at a pace where urgency dissolves and perspective returns. The universe does not ask us to hurry. It simply keeps shining, whether we are watching or not. And maybe that is why these distant beacons feel so calming. They remind us that time is wide, that existence is patient, and that even the most powerful light does not rush to be seen. As you rest here, you don't need to chase these thoughts. You can let them drift past like faint stars behind closed eyes. The question itself is enough. The wondering is already doing its quiet work. To understand quasars, we don't need to begin with definitions. We can begin with a feeling. Imagine looking into the night sky and seeing something that appears small, almost delicate, a pinprick of light, no larger than a star. And yet, this gentle point outshines entire galaxies made of hundreds of billions of stars. Not by shouting, not by expanding, but simply by being intensely, continuously bright. This is the quiet paradox of a quasar. The word itself comes from a time when astronomers were deeply confused. These objects looked like stars but behaved nothing like them. They sat impossibly far away, yet burned with an energy that seemed unreasonable. For a long time they were mysteries without a home, too bright, too distant, too strange to fit into existing stories about the universe. Today, we understand quasars more clearly, but their emotional impact remains unchanged. A quasar is not a thing in isolation. It is a moment in the life of a galaxy. A brief, luminous phase when the centre of a young galaxy becomes extraordinarily active, releasing light so powerful that it travels across most of the observable universe. At the heart of a quasar lies a supermassive black hole. But this is not a story of destruction. It is a story of motion, of matter drifting inward, of gas and dust slowly circling, heating, glowing, and releasing energy as it responds to gravity's patient pull. The light we see is not from the black hole itself, but from everything moving around it, shining as it falls. Quasars are most common in the early universe, when galaxies were young and full of loose material. Over time they calm down, they fade, the intense brightness softens into quiet galactic centres, like embers after a fire has settled. So when we observe a quasar, we are not witnessing something happening now. We are witnessing something that happened long ago, a memory preserved in light, a message sent forward through time, arriving long after the moment that created it has passed. You don't need to hold on to the details of this explanation. You can let it blur gently at the edges. What matters most is the shape of the idea, that the universe once shone more fiercely than it does now, and that traces of that brightness are still finding their way to us, one quiet photon at a time. In that sense, quasars are not just objects to be studied. They are reminders that beginnings can be luminous, that intensity can be temporary, and that even the brightest phases eventually learn how to rest. The light from a quasar does not hurry. It leaves its source without knowing where it will end, without any awareness that one day it will pass through human-made glass and touch a listening mind. It simply moves at the universe's most patient speed, carrying the quiet imprint of its origin. When we say that quasar light has travelled for billions of years, we are not just describing distance, we are describing endurance. This light began its journey when the universe itself was still young, when space was denser, when galaxies were closer together, when darkness had not yet learned how to stretch so far between things. As the universe expanded, the light kept going. Space unfolded around it, gently lengthening the journey, softening the energy, stretching the waves until they became calmer, redder, slower. What arrives here is not the same light that first departed. It has been changed by time, shaped by expansion, aged by the universe itself. In this way, light becomes a kind of memory, not a memory that thinks or recalls, but one that simply persists. It carries information forward without effort, without intention. It remembers because it cannot forget. When you look at a quasar, you're not seeing where it is. You're seeing where it was. The galaxy that produced that light may have changed beyond recognition. Its brilliant phase may have ended long ago, and yet the glow continues, still telling the story of that moment. There is something deeply calming about this idea, that nothing needs to rush to be meaningful, that significance does not fade just because time has passed. The universe is full of messages that arrive late and are still welcomed. You, too, exist within this slow exchange. Light from distant places reaches your eyes. Sound from nearby spaces reaches your ears. Breath reaches inward, then leaves again. Everything moves, everything travels, everything arrives when it can. You don't need to track the years. You don't need to imagine the numbers. You can simply rest in the sense that time is wide enough to hold all things gently, including you in this moment, listening quietly as ancient light completes one more small part of its endless journey. There was a time when the universe was darker than it is now, not empty, not silent, but unfinished, like a room before the lights are fully turned on. In those early ages, matter was still gathering itself. Galaxies were not yet the calm, structured shapes we recognize today. They were smaller, messier, full of loose gas and wandering dust. Gravity was busy everywhere, quietly pulling things together, encouraging growth without instruction or plan. This was a universe still learning how to shine. Stars were being born in great numbers, igniting one by one, adding their light to the expanding darkness. Galaxies collided, merged, stretched, and reshaped themselves. Nothing felt settled. Everything was in motion, experimenting with form. And at the centres of some of these young galaxies, something remarkable began to happen. Material drifted inward. Gas clouds lost their balance and began to fall. Dust followed gentle spirals, circling deeper and deeper toward a growing gravitational centre. As this matter gathered speed, it warmed. As it warmed, it glowed. And slowly, without announcement, the first quasars began to shine. They were not separate from their galaxies. They were expressions of youth, moments when abundance and motion briefly aligned. The young universe had more fuel than it would ever have again, and quasars were one of the ways that fuel announced itself. There is a softness to imagining this time, not chaos but curiosity, not violence but intensity without restraint. The universe had not yet learned moderation. It was still discovering what it could become. Quasars belong to this era. They are rare today because the universe has grown older, calmer, more settled. Much of the loose material has already found its place. The brightest fires have burned down into steady embers, and yet the memory of that early glow remains. It travels toward us patiently, reminding us that beginnings are often luminous, and that brightness does not need to last forever to matter. As you listen, you don't need to picture every detail. You can let the image soften into an impression, a young universe breathing out light for the first time, unaware that one day, far in the future, someone would be resting in the dark, listening to its story. For a long time, quasars were not found by looking for light at all. They were noticed through signals, faint radio whispers arriving from deep space, repeating without explanation. At first, no one knew what they meant. The sources were too distant, too steady, too unfamiliar to fit comfortably into existing maps of the sky. When telescopes finally turned toward these signals, something quietly unsettling appeared. In visible light, the sources looked almost ordinary, small, star-like. They did not spread out like galaxies. They did not glow softly like nebulae. They sat there, calm and compact, giving no hint of the power they contained. This mismatch caused a pause. If they were stars, they were impossibly bright. If they were galaxies, they were impossibly small. Astronomers did not rush to conclusions. They waited. They measured. They compared. Over time, a gentle realization began to form. These lights were coming from very far away, much farther than anyone had expected. Their distance meant their brightness was not an illusion. It was real. The universe, it seemed, had been hiding something in plain sight. This moment of discovery was not loud or dramatic. It was careful and patient, shaped by years of listening rather than sudden insight, and in that patience a new understanding slowly emerged. The universe was capable of concentrating enormous energy into surprisingly small regions. It could shine intensely without spreading itself thin. There is something soothing about how this knowledge arrived, not as a breakthrough that shattered everything before it, but as a gradual adjustment of perspective, a reminder that the cosmos often reveals itself slowly, rewarding those who are willing to sit with confusion. You may feel a quiet kinship with that moment, with not knowing at first, with sensing that something doesn't quite fit and allowing time to soften the edges of uncertainty. Discovery, like rest, often begins with stillness. When something resists understanding, we often give it a careful name, not to solve it immediately, but to hold it gently while we learn. The word quasar is short for quasi-stellar radio source. It is a name born from uncertainty. Astronomers could tell these objects were not stars, but they did not yet know what they truly were. The name reflects that in-between state, something like a star but not quite, something familiar in appearance yet foreign in nature. There is a quiet humility in this kind of naming. It admits that knowledge arrives in layers. First, we notice, then we describe. Only later do we understand. For a time, the name was all anyone had. Quasars were catalogued, observed, compared, but not fully explained. They occupied a strange category in the universe, present, measurable, and yet deeply elusive. And rather than forcing certainty, science allowed the mystery to remain open. This approach mirrors something gentle about being human. We often live with partial understanding. We sense patterns before we grasp causes. We feel meanings before we can explain them. And that, too, is a valid way of knowing. Over time, as evidence accumulated and perspectives widened, the story behind the name began to unfold. The star-like appearance was only a disguise created by distance. True source was not a single shining object, but an entire region, alive with motion and energy. Still, the name remains, a reminder of the path taken to understanding, a reminder that it is okay for words to carry traces of confusion, curiosity, and patience. As you rest here, you don't need to name everything clearly. You can let ideas remain soft, undefined, allowed to be what they are. The universe does not demand precision from you tonight. It simply invites quiet attention. At first glance, quasars seem simple. A single point of light, compact, steady, almost modest in appearance. For early observers, this was the great illusion. Against the vast darkness of space, quasars looked like ordinary stars, distant, unmoving, contained. There was no visible hint of the immense structures surrounding them, no clear outline of a galaxy, no gentle haze of stars spread wide. But this simplicity was only a trick of distance. When something lies far enough away, even the largest forms collapse into points. Entire galaxies shrink into pinpricks. Complexity folds itself inward, hiding detail inside brightness. Quasars wear this disguise perfectly. Their intense light overwhelms the softer glow of the galaxy around them, erasing context and leaving behind a solitary sparkle. This teaches us something quiet about perception. What we see is not always what is there. Scale matters, distance matters, and understanding often requires us to imagine beyond appearances. The quasar is not a star at all. It is the luminous heart of a young galaxy, seen from so far away that everything else fades into silence. The stars around it still exist. The galaxy still turns, grows, and changes. But their light is drowned in the brilliance of the central glow. There is a softness in realizing this, that hidden structures can exist behind what seems simple. That depth does not always announce itself, that sometimes what looks like a single thing is actually many things moving together quietly, in coordination. As you listen, you can let this idea settle gently. You do not need to see everything clearly to know that there is more beneath the surface. The universe allows for mystery, and so can you as you drift deeper into rest. Imagine a dark room, empty and still. No shapes, no edges, no sense of distance. Just quiet darkness resting without effort. Now imagine a single, steady light appearing in that room. It does not move, it does not grow brighter. It simply exists, enough to be noticed, not enough to overwhelm. The darkness does not resist it. The light does not try to conquer the dark. They share the space without urgency. This is how a quasar can feel when we let go of explanation. A single point of light, suspended in the vastness of the universe, surrounded by distances so large they no longer feel measurable. Everything else recedes. The galaxy around it fades. Time stretches thin. What remains is presence. Light against silence. You do not need to know where the light came from. You do not need to imagine the machinery behind it. For now, it is enough to let it be what it is. In deep space, brightness does not mean noise. Power does not mean movement. Some of the most intense energies in the universe express themselves with stillness. They shine without flickering. They endure without effort. As you rest with this image, notice how your own attention softens. You're not following a story forward. You're not gathering information. You're simply staying with one quiet thing, allowing it to hold your awareness gently. This is the gravity of rest. Just as matter slowly drifts toward the center of a quasar, thoughts can drift toward stillness. There is no pull, no force, only a gradual settling. The mind circles fewer ideas. The edges blur. The center remains calm. If your breathing slows here, that is natural. If your thoughts thin out, that is natural too. A single light does not demand understanding. It only asks to be noticed, briefly, softly, before the dark becomes comfortable again. Stay here as long as you like. Nothing else needs to happen. When we move closer to the idea of a quasar, we eventually arrive at its center. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but the way you arrive at the middle of a quiet thought, slowly, almost without noticing. At the heart of every quasar lies a supermassive black hole. The phrase can sound heavy, even unsettling, but here it does not need to be. This is not a story about destruction or danger. It is a story about gravity, calm, constant, and deeply patient. A black hole, in this context, is not an event. It is a presence, a place where mass has gathered so completely that space itself bends inward. This central black hole does not shine. It does not glow or sparkle or announce itself. On its own, it is perfectly dark. The brilliance of a quasar comes not from the black hole itself, but from everything that moves around it. Gas drifts inward from the surrounding galaxy. Dust follows. Clouds of matter begin to circle, not falling straight down, but easing into wide, graceful spirals. As they move faster, they warm. As they warm, they begin to glow. Motion becomes heat. Heat becomes light. This glowing structure is called an accretion disk, though you don't need to remember the name. What matters is the feeling of it. A slow, luminous flow, like water circling a drain, or leaves caught in a gentle whirlpool. Nothing crashes, nothing rushes, everything follows the quiet rules of gravity. The black hole does not chase this material, it does not reach outward, it simply waits. Gravity is not aggressive, it is consistent. Given enough time, things drift where they are most gently drawn. There is something deeply restful about this image, a center that does not demand attention, a brightness created not by force, but by motion and patience. The universe, once again, showing that even its most powerful structures operate without urgency. As you listen, you don't need to imagine the details clearly. You can let the idea soften into a sensation, a calm center, a slow spiral, a glow that comes from movement rather than struggle. And if your thoughts begin to circle more slowly now, that is perfectly in rhythm with the story being told. Gravity rarely announces itself. It does not flash or flicker. It works quietly, shaping the universe the way water shapes stone, not through force, but through time. Around the heart of a quasar, gravity acts like a patient sculptor. It does not pull everything inward all at once. Instead, it guides. Matter responds gradually, adjusting its path, settling into motion that feels almost deliberate. Gas clouds drift closer. Dust follows curves rather than straight lines. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is rushed. This patience is what allows structure to form. If gravity were abrupt, the universe would be chaotic beyond recognition. But because it is steady, galaxies can exist. Stars can be born. Quasars can shine for millions of years, sustained not by violence but by balance. The inward pull is matched by motion. Falling becomes orbiting. Descent becomes circulation. In this way, gravity is less like a command and more like an invitation. Matter is not forced to obey. It simply responds to where the universe feels most settled. There is something comforting in this image, that even on the largest scales imaginable, creation is guided by consistency rather than urgency. The universe does not hurry things into place. It allows them to arrive. You might notice a parallel here. Thoughts, like matter, do not need to be pushed away. When left alone, they often find calmer paths on their own. Attention drifts where it feels most natural. Stillness gathers quietly at the center. As gravity shapes galaxies, rest shapes awareness. Both work best when allowed to move slowly. Both leave behind patterns that feel inevitable only in hindsight. You don't need to follow every idea here. You can let the sense of patience remain, like a low, steady hum beneath the words. The universe is sculpting itself even now, and you are allowed to rest while it does. If you could watch the heart of a quasar in perfect stillness, you would not see chaos. You would see motion, smooth, layered, and unhurried. Around the central darkness, matter arranges itself into a broad, glowing disk. Gas and dust do not fall straight inward. They circle, they adjust, they slide past one another in countless gentle paths, each following gravity's quiet guidance. This structure is called an accretion disk, but the name is less important than the feeling it carries. The motion is continuous, but never frantic. Like a river seen from high above, the flow looks calm even when it carries immense energy. Friction builds slowly where layers of gas meet. Heat rises without flame. Light emerges without explosion. This is how the quasar learns to shine. Every turn of the disk converts motion into warmth. Every slow, inward step adds a little more brightness. Over time, the disk becomes one of the most luminous structures in the universe, not because it moves fast, but because it moves without stopping. There is something deeply soothing in this kind of persistence. Nothing needs to be sudden to be powerful. Nothing needs to arrive all at once. The accretion disk teaches us that steady motion, maintained gently, can illuminate entire galaxies. As you listen, you might imagine your own thoughts like particles in this disk. They circle quietly. Some drift closer to stillness. Others remain farther out, moving slowly, harmlessly. You don't need to control them. Motion does not mean disturbance. Circling does not mean falling. The universe is comfortable with this kind of flow. It does not demand straight lines or final destinations. It allows things to take their time, to glow gradually, to become what they are through motion alone. You can rest inside that idea now. A soft motion, a gentle orbit, a light that comes from patience rather than effort. As matter continues its slow journey inward, something quiet but remarkable happens. Movement becomes warmth. Warmth becomes light. Nothing strikes a spark. Nothing ignites a flame. Instead, energy emerges naturally from motion itself. As gas and dust spiral through the accretion disk, they brush against neighbouring layers, exchanging momentum, sharing heat. The closer they drift toward the centre, the faster they move, and with that speed, their glow deepens. This light is not created by burning the way stars shine. It is born from friction and compression, from matter responding to gravity's invitation. The universe does not force brightness into being. It allows it to arise as a consequence of movement. The colours of this light stretch far beyond what human eyes can see. Some of it is visible, shimmering softly across cosmic distances. Much of it lives in wavelengths of X-rays and ultraviolet glow, carrying information we translate later with careful instruments and quiet patience. And still, despite its power, the process remains gentle. Matter does not rush toward disappearance. It lingers, it circles, it shines for millions of years before finally crossing the unseen boundary where light can no longer follow. The brightness of a quasar is sustained not by a single moment, but by countless small motions layered over immense time. There is something calming about this idea that light can be the result of surrender rather than resistance. That energy can emerge without struggle, that even falling can produce something beautiful. As you listen, you might allow this image to soften your awareness, thoughts drifting inward, warming slightly, glowing briefly, then passing on. Nothing needs to be held. Nothing needs to be stopped. Everything finds its place in motion. The universe shines not because it tries to, but because it moves. And tonight you are allowed to move gently toward rest, letting light fade naturally into quiet. There is no straight path here, only a curve, only a slow, patient turning. Matter does not fall directly toward the centre of a quasar. It spirals, wide at first, almost wandering, then gradually closer, each loop smaller than the last. The motion is so smooth that it barely feels like falling at all. It feels more like settling. This spiral has no urgency. It does not hurry toward an ending. It simply follows the shape that gravity creates, a gentle invitation inward. The universe allows time to stretch, to soften, to make room for every gradual change. In this inward motion, nothing is wasted. Energy is released slowly. Light appears, not in bursts, but in a continuous glow. The spiral teaches us that movement does not have to mean disturbance. Direction does not have to mean pressure. You can rest inside this image. Imagine thoughts moving the same way. They do not need to be pushed away. They do not need to be solved. They can circle, each pass becoming quieter, less demanding. With every loop, attention drifts a little closer to stillness. This is not losing focus. This is returning to center. In the deepest regions of the spiral, motion becomes almost imperceptible, not because it has stopped, but because it has become smooth enough to disappear into calm. The glow remains steady and soft, held in place by balance rather than effort. If your breathing feels slower now, that is natural. If the space between thoughts feels wider, that is natural too. The universe knows how to rest inside motion, and for this moment, so do you. Stay here, in the slow inward curve. Nothing needs to happen next. When we hear that a quasar can outshine an entire galaxy, the mind may pause in disbelief. How could something so compact release more light than hundreds of billions of stars combined? The answer is not found in size, but in efficiency. Stars shine by burning their fuel slowly, transforming matter into light over long lifetimes. A quasar shines differently. It gathers matter and converts motion into energy with extraordinary effectiveness. As gas spirals inward, an astonishing portion of its mass becomes radiant output. Compared to stars, this process is remarkably productive, turning gentle movement into vast illumination. But even this brightness is not sudden, it is sustained. A quasar shines intensely not for moments, but for millions of years. Its light is steady, persistent, patient, like a lighthouse that never turns off, sending its beam across cosmic oceans without pause. This steadiness matters. It means that quasars are not flashes or accidents. They are phases, chapters in the long lives of galaxies. When conditions are right, when enough material is present and motion aligns just so, a galaxy's centre enters this luminous state. And when the fuel thins, the light slowly softens. There is something reassuring here. The universe does not rely on extremes to create wonder. It relies on alignment, balance, and time. When things move together in the right way, brightness follows naturally. You might notice how this mirrors quieter experiences closer to home. Sustained warmth, sustained attention, sustained care. These often matter more than brief intensity. Light that lasts does not need to shout. As you rest with this idea, let the concept of brightness loosen its grip. This is not a sharp glare. It is a wide, enveloping glow, one that does not disturb the dark but coexists with it. The universe shines brightly when conditions are gentle enough to allow it, and tonight, gentleness is already enough. Not all of a quasar's energy stays close to home. Some of it finds a path outward. From the regions near the centre, narrow streams of energy can form, long, focused flows that extend far beyond the glowing disk. These are called jets, though the word can sound sharper than the reality. In truth, they are remarkably orderly, calm in shape, consistent in direction. They emerge not because of chaos, but because of alignment. Magnetic fields, shaped by motion and rotation, guide energy into these slender channels. Matter and light follow invisible lines, flowing outward in opposite directions like two quiet breaths released into space. The jets do not spread wildly. They remain narrow, composed, almost disciplined in their journey. Seen from afar, these beams can stretch across distances larger than the entire galaxies. Yet even at that scale, they do not rush. They extend slowly, steadily, maintaining their form over millions of years. Power, once again, expressed through patience. Whether we notice these jets depends on where we are standing. If one happens to point toward us, the quasar can appear even brighter, its light gently amplified by perspective alone. Nothing has changed at the source, only the angle has shifted. This is a soft reminder that brightness is not always about intensity. Sometimes it is about alignment, about being in the right place to receive what is already flowing. You might feel something settle here, the idea that clarity does not require force. That direction can emerge naturally when conditions are calm enough. The universe does not struggle to send its energy outward, it allows structure to guide it. As you listen, you can imagine your own attention aligning gently, not toward effort, but toward ease. Nothing needs to be pushed, nothing needs to be aimed. When things line up quietly, movement becomes simple, and in that simplicity the universe continues its slow luminous conversation with the dark. Sometimes the brightness we notice is not because something has changed out there, but because of where we are standing. In the vast geometry of the universe, direction matters. When a quasar's beam happens to align with our position, its light feels closer, stronger, more immediate. Not because it has grown louder, but because it is gently facing us. Perspective alone can transform quiet power into something unmistakable. This is not favoritism, it is not intention, it is simply alignment, The universe does not aim its light with purpose. It releases energy evenly, patiently, in all directions allowed by structure and motion, and every so often, a distant beam passes through our narrow window of awareness, arriving here with remarkable clarity. There is something humbling in this realization. Much of what exists remains unseen, not because it is hidden, but because we are not aligned to receive it. And much of what feels extraordinary is simply ordinary energy meeting the right angle. This idea carries a gentle comfort. It reminds us that we do not need to search endlessly for brightness. Sometimes brightness arrives on its own, quietly, when conditions happen to line up. You may notice this in smaller moments too. A thought that suddenly makes sense, a feeling that becomes clear without effort, a calm that settles unexpectedly. Nothing new has been created. Something has simply aligned. As you rest here, let go of the need to face anything directly. You do not need to turn toward understanding. You do not need to adjust your angle. The universe is wide enough to send light in all directions. Some of it will reach you naturally, and when it does, you can receive it without urgency, without analysis, just as a quiet presence passing through. When we speak about how far away a quasar is, numbers often appear, billions of light years, distances so large they lose their shape in the mind. But in truth, quasars are not measured best by space, they are measured by time. Every photon of light carries a small story about when it began. As the universe expands, that light stretches, its waves lengthening, its energy softening. By the time it reaches us, it is quieter than when it left, not weaker in meaning, just older. This gentle stretching is what astronomers call redshift, but you don't need the word to feel the idea. The farther a quasar is, the further back in time we are looking. Its light began its journey when the universe was younger, denser, closer together, when galaxies were still forming their identities, when the rules of structure were still being tested. Distance, in this sense, becomes a memory scale, a way of listening to earlier chapters of existence. This changes how we imagine space. It is no longer a static emptiness between objects. It becomes a flowing medium, carrying moments forward. Every direction we look becomes a different age. Every point of light becomes a timestamp. There is something deeply calming about this. That time is not lost. That it travels gently, embedded in light. You are surrounded by these quiet messages right now. Ancient photons passing through the room, through your eyes, through your awareness. You don't need to catch them. You don't need to decode them. Their presence alone is enough. As you rest here, let the idea of distance soften. You're not far from the past. You are not separate from it. Everything that has been is still arriving, slowly, patiently, in waves of light. And you are allowed to receive only what feels gentle enough to hold. Imagine listening instead of looking. Not with ears, but with patience. Ancient light does not arrive loudly. It does not announce its age or its origin. It simply reaches you, carrying the quiet imprint of a time when the universe was younger, closer together, still forming its long memory. To listen to it is not an act of effort, but of allowance. This light has been travelling for so long that urgency has dissolved from it completely. Whatever intensity it once had has been softened by distance, stretched by expansion, calmed by time. What remains is a gentle presence, steady, reliable, uninsistent. You can rest inside this idea. Each photon has crossed regions of space that no longer exist in the same way. It has passed through eras without names, through expanding darkness, through silence deeper than any night on Earth, and still it arrives. Not tired, not diminished, simply changed. Listening to ancient light means letting go of the need to understand where it began. It means trusting that arrival is enough. The universe does not require comprehension in order to be experienced. It only requires attention. and even that can be soft. In this space, facts become unnecessary, numbers fade, explanations thin out. What remains is the feeling of continuity, that something from very far away has reached you without interruption. If your thoughts feel slower here, that is natural. If your awareness feels wider, that is natural too. You're not reaching backward through time. Time is reaching forward to you. And for this moment, you are allowed to simply listen. Not for meaning, not for answers, but for the quiet reassurance that the universe has always been communicating in gentle ways. Stay here. Nothing needs to move faster than this. When we observe a quasar, we're not watching something unfold in the present. We're opening a window into a moment that has already passed. In this way, quasars become natural time machines, not devices that move us backward, but signals that carry the past forward. Their light preserves a snapshot of the universe as it once was, allowing us to witness conditions that no longer exist nearby. Young galaxies, abundant gas, centers glowing with intensity that has long since softened. This does not require imagination as much as acceptance. The universe simply works this way. Light moves, space expands, time leaves traces, and if we are patient enough, those traces arrive. What we receive is not a complete picture. It is partial, filtered, softened by distance. But that softness is what makes it gentle. We are not overwhelmed by the past. We are introduced to it slowly in waves thin enough to hold. Quasars tell us that the universe remembers itself, not through intention, but through physics. The past does not disappear. It stretches, thins, and continues outward, becoming quieter as it goes. And in that quietness, it becomes accessible. There is comfort here. The idea that beginnings are not lost, only distant. That intensity does not vanish, it transforms. That even the earliest moments of cosmic history still have a voice, however soft. You might notice how this mirrors personal memory. Moments fade, details blur, but the feeling remains. Memory does not shout. It hums gently beneath awareness, surfacing when conditions are calm enough to notice. As you rest with this thought, you don't need to picture galaxies or timelines. You can simply feel the sense of continuity, that you are connected to something older than language, older than Earth, older than the idea of observation itself. The universe has been telling its story for a long time, and tonight you are listening to one quiet chapter as it finally arrives. Quasars are not separate from galaxies. They are woven into their beginnings. When a quasar shines, it marks a moment when a galaxy is still gathering itself, still learning how to hold its shape. Gas is plentiful, dust drifts freely, stars are forming, but the structure is not yet settled. Everything feels open, unfinished, full of potential. At the centre, the quasar glows, not as a leader, not as a ruler, but as a consequence of abundance. There is simply so much material available that motion intensifies. Gravity guides it inward. Light follows naturally. In this way, quasars act like quiet signals saying, a galaxy is being born here. They tell us that galaxies and their central black holes grow together, not separately. As the galaxy gathers mass, the centre does too. As the centre brightens, it influences its surroundings, warming gas, shaping motion, sometimes slowing future star formation by gently clearing space. This is not control, it is conversation. The galaxy responds, the quasar responds. Over time, balance emerges. The brightest phase fades, leaving behind a calmer structure, a mature galaxy with a quiet heart. There is something soothing in this partnership. Growth does not happen in isolation. Nothing forms alone. Even on the largest scales, creation is relational, shaped by interaction rather than domination. You might feel a subtle echo of this idea in your own life. Growth often comes in phases, periods of intensity followed by rest. Bright beginnings that eventually soften into steadiness. None of it is wasted. None of it is rushed. As you listen, let this sense of gentle formation settle in. Galaxies take billions of years to become what they are, and still, the universe never hurries them. Neither do you need to hurry now. In the life of a galaxy, nothing grows alone. The central black hole and the surrounding stars evolve side by side, quietly influencing one another over immense stretches of time. As gas drifts inward to feed the quasar, some of it becomes light, some becomes heat, and some is gently redirected back into the galaxy. This exchange shapes what happens next. Star formation may slow in some regions and continue in others. Motion adjusts, balance shifts, growth responds. It is less like consumption and more like circulation. The black hole does not simply take, the galaxy does not simply give. Energy moves between them in subtle ways, creating a long dialogue written in gravity and light. Over millions of years, this conversation leaves lasting patterns. The size of the black hole, the shape of the galaxy, the calm or activity of its future. This mutual growth teaches us something quiet about scale. Even the most massive objects in the universe do not exist independently. Influence flows both directions. Change is shared. Structure emerges from relationship. You may notice how gentle this feels when compared to the language we often use for power. There is no conquest here, no struggle for dominance, just slow adjustment, guided by physics that favours stability over extremes. As you rest with this idea, you can let the sense of cooperation linger. Growth does not require force. It can unfold naturally, shaped by connection and time. The universe builds itself through balance, and balance, once found, invites rest. No light in the universe is meant to shine forever. Even the brightest phases learn how to soften. As time passes, the abundant fuel that once fed a quasar begins to thin. Gas that drifted freely is used up, blown outward, or settles into stars. The steady inward flow slows. The accretion disk cools. The glow that once outshone galaxies gradually dims. This is not a sudden ending. It is a long exhale. The quasar does not switch off. It fades. Its brilliance loosens step by step until it becomes something quieter. A galactic centre that still holds immense mass but no longer announces itself across the universe. What remains is calm gravity, steady and dark, continuing its patient work without spectacle. There is something deeply reassuring in this transition. Intensity gives way to steadiness. Activity becomes presence. The universe does not cling to its brightest moments. It allows them to pass, knowing that quieter states have their own purpose. Many galaxies you see in the night sky once carried this kind of light at their hearts. The Milky Way likely did too, long before Earth formed, and now its centre rests quietly, no longer a beacon but still complete. As you listen, you might feel permission in this story. Permission to soften. Permission to let brightness fade without loss. Nothing essential disappears when intensity quiets. Often what remains is more stable, more enduring. You don't need to hold on to peak moments. The universe doesn't. It trusts the slow return to calm. And so can you, as this chapter gently settles into stillness. There is a moment that cannot be timed, a moment when brightness does not end, but loosens its grip. In the life of a quasar, this moment arrives quietly. The inward flow of matter grows thinner. The glow that once filled vast distances begins to feel less insistent. Nothing breaks, nothing collapses. The light simply learns how to rest. Imagine standing at the edge of evening, when the day has not yet ended, but the light has already changed. Colours soften, shadows lengthen. The world does not disappear. It becomes gentler. This is how a quasar fades, not into absence, but into calm. The universe allows this transition without resistance. There is no effort to maintain brilliance, no attempt to preserve intensity for its own sake. The conditions that once created extraordinary light have passed, and so the light responds, easing itself into quiet continuity. You can linger here. This is a place where nothing is demanded, no explanation is needed, no future is required. The glow becomes background, motion becomes subtle. What once commanded attention now blends into the larger stillness of the galaxy. The centre remains steady and present, holding mass without announcing it. As you rest with this image, notice how it mirrors your own experience of letting go. When effort softens, when attention drifts away from sharp focus, when the need to be bright or productive or defined loosens naturally, nothing is lost in this softening, everything essential remains. The universe knows how to dim without fear, and for this moment, you can rest in that same permission, allowing light, thought and awareness to fade gently into comfort. The universe has never been in a hurry. Not at the beginning, not now, not ever. Stars take millions of years to form. Galaxies take billions. Quasars shine for ages that stretch beyond anything the human mind can comfortably hold. And when their time passes, it does so gradually, without urgency or regret. Nothing in the cosmos is late. Nothing arrives too early. Even the most dramatic changes unfold at a pace that favours patience. Gravity works slowly, light travels steadily. Expansion itself happens gently, carrying everything outward without demand. The universe does not push itself toward completion. It allows itself to become. This is easy to forget in a human world filled with clocks and deadlines. But when we look outward, truly outward, we are reminded that rushing is not a requirement of existence. It is a habit, not a law. Quasars teach this quietly. Their brightness is not a burst, but a long chapter. Their fading is not a failure, but a natural transition. Nothing about them suggests urgency. They do not hurry to shine, and they do not resist the moment when it's time to grow quiet. You may feel something ease here. If your thoughts slow, that is not falling behind. If your attention drifts, that is not losing focus. It is simply returning to the pace the universe has always kept. For this moment, you're allowed to move at cosmic speed, slow enough that nothing feels pressured, wide enough that nothing feels missing. You can rest inside this rhythm, knowing that existence continues perfectly well without haste. The universe has all the time it needs, and for now, so do you. If we look around the nearby universe, quasars are almost nowhere to be found. The space around us feels quieter now, less brilliant, more settled. This is not because the universe has lost its ability to shine, it is because it has grown older. The conditions that once allowed quasars to glow so intensely are no longer common. The loose gas that once flowed freely has mostly found its place, woven into stars, locked into galaxies, or gently dispersed over time. Quasars belong to youth. They appear most often when galaxies are young and full of excess, when motion is abundant and balance has not yet been established. As the universe ages, these bright phases become rarer, like childhood moments that cannot be repeated in exactly the same way. There is something tender about this scarcity. It tells us that brightness is not meant to dominate forever. It appears when it is needed and then steps back, allowing quieter structures to take over. The universe does not cling to its most dramatic expressions. It trusts evolution. Nearby galaxies, including our own, now host black holes that rest quietly at their centres. They are still massive, still influential, but no longer luminous beacons. Their work continues silently, shaping orbits and motion without calling attention to itself. This quiet present does not mean something is missing. It means something has matured. As you rest with this thought, you might notice a gentle reassurance. Life, like the universe, moves through phases. Intensity fades not because it was wrong, but because it has completed its role. What remains afterward can be softer, steadier, and deeply complete. At the centre of the Milky Way there is a black hole. It is vast, heavy, and unimaginably dense, and yet it is calm. It does not blaze like a quasar. It does not send brilliant beams across space. Most of the time it is almost completely silent. Gas drifts nearby. Stars orbit at respectful distances. Light moves on, undisturbed. If not for careful observation, we might never notice it at all. This quiet centre is a reminder that brilliance is not the only expression of power. Our galaxy likely passed through a quasar phase long ago, when it was younger and fuller, when material moved more freely toward the centre. That chapter has ended. What remains is steadiness, a gravitational presence that holds the galaxy together without spectacle. There is something deeply comforting about this idea, that even immense mass can exist without drama. That influence does not need to be visible to be real. That silence can be a sign of balance, not absence. You might imagine the Milky Way now as a settled place, stars following familiar paths, spiral arms turning slowly, predictably. The central darkness simply there, anchoring everything without asking to be noticed. As you rest with this image, you may feel permission to be quieter too, to exist without shining, to hold your own centre without announcing it. Nothing essential is lost in this stillness. In many ways, it is the most stable state of all. The universe does not demand brightness from everything. Sometimes it simply asks for presence. It is natural to wonder. If other galaxies once blazed as quasars, could ours have done the same? The answer is not certain, and that uncertainty is gentle rather than troubling. Evidence suggests that long ago the Milky Way's centre was far more active than it is today. Gas was abundant. Motion was freer. Conditions may have briefly aligned to produce a luminous phase, not as extreme as the brightest quasars we observe, but bright enough to leave quiet traces. If this happened, it happened long before Earth formed oceans, long before the first cells learned how to divide. The light from that era has already passed beyond us, continuing outward into the wider universe, carrying a memory of our galaxy's youth. There is something calming about imagining this. Our home galaxy, once bright and expressive, now settled and quiet, not diminished, matured. The universe allows places to change without losing their identity. A galaxy can move from intensity to calm and still remain whole. Nothing about its past brilliance is erased. It simply becomes part of its story. You may feel a subtle reflection here. Growth often includes phases we no longer inhabit, brighter moments that have passed, quieter rhythms that follow. Neither replaces the other. They coexist across time. As you listen, you don't need to know whether the Milky Way truly shone like a quasar. The possibility alone is enough. It reminds us that calm does not mean a lack of history. Stillness does not mean emptiness. Sometimes, the most peaceful places are those that have already burned brightly and learned how to rest. Light does more than illuminate, it remembers. Every beam carries the conditions of its beginning, the temperature, the motion, the density of the place where it was born. As it travels, it does not forget. It stretches, it softens, but it keeps the imprint of its origin quietly intact. Quasar light is memory on the largest scale imaginable. It remembers a universe that was younger, closer together, more intense. It remembers galaxies before they settled, black holes before they grew quiet. And when that light reaches us, it brings those memories gently into the present. This remembering does not require awareness. The universe does not recall the past the way we do. It simply preserves it through motion. Light moves forward, carrying history without interpretation. Meaning is something we add later, softly when we are ready. There is comfort in this. Nothing important vanishes completely. It changes form, it spreads out, it becomes quieter, but it continues. You can feel this even now. The warmth of a room after a light has been turned off, the echo of a sound after it has faded, the sense of a moment lingering even after it has passed. These are small versions of the same principle. As you rest, allow this idea to settle without effort. You're surrounded by memories carried by light, from the sun, from distant stars, from places far beyond naming. They pass through you without asking anything in return. The universe remembers by moving, and tonight, you're allowed to rest inside that motion, letting memory drift by without holding on. Time is often imagined as something that moves past us, but in the universe, time flows through space, carried gently by light. Every direction you could look is also a direction into the past. Near stars speak of recent moments. Distant galaxies speak of older ones. Quasars speak from a time so early that the universe itself was still learning how to stretch and breathe. Space becomes layered with ages, and time becomes something you can almost drift through. This flow is not a river rushing forward. It is a wide, slow current. As light travels, it does not just cross distance. It carries the rhythm of expansion with it. The universe grows larger while the light is on its way, lengthening the journey, smoothing the waves, calming their energy. Time does not chase the light. It unfolds around it. There is something deeply soothing in this picture. Time is not a pressure. It is an environment. You exist inside it the way a leaf exists inside water, supported, carried, never required to swim against the flow. Quasars remind us of this gently. Their light has moved through expanding space for billions of years, and still it arrives. Nothing rushed it. Nothing blocked it. Time simply made room. You may feel a quiet release here. The sense that time is not something you need to manage or overcome. It is something you're already part of. Breathing happens inside it. Rest happens inside it. Sleep happens inside it. For this moment, you can let time do the moving. You can remain still. The universe has been flowing long before you noticed it, and it will continue calmly, whether you're awake or asleep. There is only a small window in which the universe can be seen, not because it hides itself, but because seeing requires a listener. For most of cosmic history, there were no eyes, no instruments, no quiet minds waiting in the dark. Light travelled freely, carrying its stories forward, unaware of whether it would ever be noticed. And then, briefly, a species learned how to pause, how to listen, how to build gentle tools that could receive what was already arriving. This moment, this era, is fragile. Not fragile in a fearful way, but in a delicate one. A thin slice of time when curiosity exists alongside calm, when the universe is old enough to be studied, and young enough to still be glowing with memories of its beginnings. Quasars pass through this window like ancient letters finally being opened. Their light arrives during a brief overlap between emission and awareness. Too early and no one would have noticed. Too late, and the signals would thin into silence. Observation happens not because of control, but because of timing. There is something humbling here. We are not the centre of the story. We are witnesses, temporary, quiet, attentive. The universe does not wait for us, and yet for a moment it aligns with our ability to receive. You may feel a gentle appreciation in this thought, that awareness itself is fleeting, that listening is precious, that stillness allows connection. As you rest now, you are part of this window too, not to analyse or measure, but simply to notice. The universe is offering its story continuously. You do not need to capture it. You only need to let it pass through. And in this passing, something settles. A sense of being present at the right time without effort. When we reach out to the universe, we do not do so with hands. We listen. Telescopes are often imagined as tools that look, but in truth, they receive. They wait quietly, open to whatever light happens to arrive. They do not chase signals. They do not disturb what they observe. They simply hold still long enough for ancient photons to complete their journey. This gentleness matters. To study quasars, astronomers learned how to listen across many kinds of light: visible glow, radio waves, faint X-rays that slip through space unnoticed by our eyes. Each instrument is tuned not to touch, but to receive. Not to change the universe, but to allow it to speak in its own time. There is a softness in this approach, knowledge gained not by interference, but by patience. Understanding that comes not from reaching outward, but from staying open. You might imagine these instruments scattered across Earth and space, all quietly waiting. Some sit on mountaintops under clear skies. Others orbit silently above the atmosphere. All of them are doing the same simple thing, listening to light that has already travelled far enough. The universe does not notice them, and yet through them we notice the universe. This is a gentle partnership. The cosmos offers its signals freely. We receive only what arrives. No force is required, no demand is made. Observation becomes a form of respect. As you rest with this idea, you might feel how little effort is needed to be aware. You do not have to reach for understanding tonight. You can let it come to you or pass by without resistance. Listening does not require tension. Stillness is enough, and in that stillness, ancient light continues to arrive, quietly, endlessly, whether we measure it or simply let it drift through the dark. There is a kind of knowing that does not involve grasping, a knowing that comes from allowing things to arrive on their own. When we learn about quasars, we do not touch them. We do not visit them. We do not change them in any way, and yet we understand something real about their nature. This understanding is built entirely from reception, from light that reaches us without being asked, from signals that arrive whether we are ready or not. This is knowledge without ownership. The universe does not belong to us because we can describe it. The light from a quasar does not become ours because we detect it. We remain separate, and that separation is gentle. It allows respect. It allows wonder to stay intact. There is peace in this distance. So much of human life involves reaching for answers, for certainty, for control. But the cosmos offers another model. It shows us that insight can emerge without pursuit, that clarity can come from stillness, that understanding does not always require effort. You may feel this kind of knowing now. Not sharp, not detailed, but present. A sense that things make enough sense to allow rest, that you do not need to complete the picture to feel settled within it. As you listen, you can let go of the urge to gather. You do not need to collect facts or hold on to explanations. The universe has already shared what it will. Receiving it softly is enough. In this way, learning becomes like breathing. In, out. No strain, no goal. Just a gentle exchange between presence and awareness. And as this exchange continues, your mind can rest, knowing that nothing essential is being missed. Every beginning carries a certain brightness, not always visible, not always loud, but present, steady, full of possibility. Quasars belong to this category of beginnings. They are not the first things in the universe, but they arise early when structure is still forming and energy still moves freely. They mark moments when galaxies are young enough to shine without restraint, when balance has not yet settled into calm. In this way, quasars are not anomalies. They are expressions of youth. They tell us that the early universe was not quiet or empty, but active in a slow, deliberate way. Matter gathered, gravity shaped, light emerged. And for a time, some regions glowed intensely, announcing that something new was learning how to exist. This is comforting to imagine. The universe did not begin fully formed or perfectly arranged. It experimented. It allowed brightness to appear where conditions aligned. It let intensity have its moment, knowing that it would eventually soften. Beginnings are like that. They're often luminous, not because they are complete, but because they are open. Energy moves more freely when nothing has settled yet. Possibility shines brightest before it knows what it will become. As you rest with this thought, you might feel a quiet resonance. Even now, beginnings happen everywhere, in ideas, in days, in breaths. They do not require fanfare. They do not need to be sustained forever. Their role is simply to open something gently. The universe honors its beginnings without clinging to them. It lets them shine, and then it lets them rest. You can do the same. Power in the universe is often quiet. It does not announce itself with noise or speed. It reveals itself through consistency. Quasars remind us of this in a gentle way. They are among the most powerful phenomena ever known, yet their power is expressed as steadiness, a continuous glow held in place by balance. Their light does not flicker wildly. It does not surge and collapse. It persists, calmly, over immense spans of time. This challenges how we often imagine strength. We are taught to associate power with force, with motion, with urgency. But the universe shows us another form, one where power is sustained rather than explosive, patient rather than dramatic. Even the black hole at the center of a quasar does not struggle. It does not push outward. It simply exists, shaping space around it through presence alone. Everything else responds naturally. Energy flows where structure allows it to flow. Light emerges where motion is steady enough to produce it. There is a quiet elegance here. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is excessive. Immense energy is held gently, guided by simple rules repeated over time. You may feel a soft recognition in this. Strength does not always need to be visible. Influence does not always need to be asserted. Some of the most powerful states are also the most peaceful. As you listen, you can allow this idea to settle into your body. Power as steadiness. Power as balance. Power as the ability to remain present without strain. The universe does not exhaust itself to be powerful. It simply continues. And in this moment, you're allowed to continue gently too, breathing, resting, letting awareness drift without effort. As you rest here, it becomes clear that this story is not only about distant objects, it is also about you. Every moment you have spent listening tonight has been shaped by ancient light. Photons that began their journey long before human language existed have reached your eyes, your world, your awareness. You're not separate from this exchange. You're part of it, a quiet receiver in a long chain of arrival. You do not need special knowledge to belong here. You do not need to understand the equations or remember the terms. Simply being present is enough. The universe does not ask for expertise. It offers experience. In this sense, you are doing what the cosmos has always invited, listening. Listening does not require effort. It is something that happens naturally when movement slows, when attention softens. When the mind stops reaching outward and allows what is already here to settle in. Quasar light has travelled billions of years to arrive without demand. You do not owe it interpretation. You do not owe it meaning. Your presence is already a form of acknowledgement. There is something deeply calming in realizing this. You're not small in the universe because you are quiet. You are connected because you can receive. Awareness itself is a meeting place, where ancient motion and present stillness overlap. As you breathe now, you can imagine yourself as part of this gentle network of listening. Light arrives, awareness notices, nothing more is required. The universe continues its slow conversation. And for this moment you are resting inside it, not as an observer above it, but as a participant within its quiet flow. Why do we look so far away? Why does ancient light feel comforting rather than distant? Now, as this journey begins to circle back on itself, the question no longer needs an answer. It has softened through listening. It has changed shape. What once felt like curiosity now feels more like recognition. We look toward the earliest light because it asks nothing of us. It does not expect response, productivity, or understanding. It simply arrives carrying the quiet assurance that existence has always been unfolding, long before our worries appeared, and will continue long after they fade. Quasars offer this reassurance gently. They remind us that even in the universe's most intense moments, there was patience. Even in its brightest phases, there was order. Even at the beginning, there was already a kind of calm hidden inside motion. When we look outward, we're not escaping the present. We're placing it inside something wider. The small rhythms of breathing, resting, and listening begin to feel less fragile when held against billions of years of steady cosmic flow. You may notice now that the question no longer pulls your attention forward. It rests beside you instead. It does not demand resolution. It simply keeps you company, like a quiet thought that no longer needs to be finished. This is often how understanding ends, not with certainty, but with ease. As you rest here, allow the question to dissolve into the background, the way distant light blends into night. You don't need to follow it any further. The universe has already answered in its own ways by continuing calmly without hurry. In the long darkness of space, quasars can feel like nightlights left on by the universe, not to guide, not to warn, but simply to soften the dark. They glow from a time when everything was new, when structures were still forming and nothing yet knew how quiet it would become. Their light travels outward without instruction, drifting across expanding space, offering a gentle point of reference in an otherwise vast night. Night lights do not brighten the whole room. They do not erase the dark. They make it feel safer to rest within it. Quasars do something similar. They remind us that darkness is not empty, that distance is not silence, that even in the deepest reaches of space, something has been glowing steadily, patiently, for longer than memory can hold. This is not a universe that abandons its past. It carries it forward, softly. As you listen now, you might imagine these distant beacons scattered across time, each one a quiet marker of a beginning. They are not asking to be followed. They are not asking to be understood. They are simply there, faint, reliable, unchanged by whether anyone is watching. There is comfort in that constancy, light that does not depend on attention, presence that does not require response. You are allowed to rest with this image, a universe that leaves gentle lights on, not for control or clarity, but for reassurance. Proof that something has always been here, shining quietly, even when everything else feels dark. Let the idea settle like evening light in a familiar room. Nothing needs to be illuminated fully. Enough light is already present. As the story of distant light grows quieter, awareness begins to return gently to where you are, not abruptly. Not fully, just enough to feel grounded again. The universe remains vast. Quasars continue shining far away. Ancient light keeps travelling without pause. But here, in this moment, there is also the simple presence of now, the feeling of stillness around you, the softness of breath, the weight of rest settling in. Nothing from the journey needs to be carried forward. You do not need to remember names or sequences or explanations. Like light passing through space, the ideas have already done their work simply by arriving. What remains is calm. The present moment does not compete with the cosmos. It belongs to it. The same rules apply here. Patience, flow, gentle motion. Your breathing follows them naturally. Inhale, exhale. Each cycle unhurried, complete. You may notice how small this moment feels compared to billions of years. And yet, it is not insignificant. It is part of the same unfolding. The universe expresses itself through galaxies and through quiet human pauses alike. As attention settles, the edges of thought soften. The need to follow the story dissolves. There is nowhere else to go now. The journey has gently circled back, and rest is waiting. You can let your mind float here, between wakefulness and sleep, knowing that everything important continues without your effort. Light travels, space expands, time flows, and you're allowed to stop moving for a while. Nothing needs to conclude. Nothing needs to resolve. The universe does not end its stories with punctuation. It lets them fade gently, the way light thins as it travels farther and farther from where it began. Quasars continue shining somewhere beyond thought, not because they must, but because motion is still unfolding there, patiently, without strain. Even now, ancient light is passing through space. It does not know whether it will be noticed. It does not wait for recognition. It simply moves, wave by wave, carrying the quiet assurance that existence continues on its own terms. You are part of that continuation. Breath moves without instruction. The body rests without effort. Awareness loosens its grip and drifts naturally towards sleep. There is nothing left to hold on to. The questions that open this journey have already softened into calm. The images have dimmed into background glow. What remains is a sense of flow, steady, reliable, wide enough to carry everything gently. The universe does not rush its endings. It allows them to dissolve into rest, and now you are allowed to do the same. Everything flows, sleep in that motion,